ये है आपका अपना सबरंग 94.7 FM।
सबरंग रेडियो 94.7 FM ਦੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਲਿਸਨਰਸ ਦਾ ਟਵਾਨਾ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ 7 ਵਜੇ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 9 ਵਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਜੀ, ਉਹ 'ਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦਾ ਇਹਦਾ ਮੰਡੇ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ। ਸੋ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ 'ਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੋਸਤ ਨੇ ਜੀ ਦਵਿੰਦਰ ਤੂਰ ਜੀ। ਸੋ ਤੂਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਜੀ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਰਜੇਸ਼ ਜੀ, ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਰੋਤਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੁੜਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਵੈਰੀ ਮੱਚ ਤੂਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੂਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਥੋਮਸ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ ਆਪਾਂ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਸ ਕੈਂਪੇਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਦੀ ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਦੀ ਰੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਦੋਸਤੋ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਮਿਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਪੀਸੀ ਅਲਬਰਟਾ ਦੀ ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਰੇਸ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਆ, ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਰੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਿੰਨੇ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟ ਪੂਰੀ ਜੋਰ ਅਜਮਾਈ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਮ ਪ੍ਰਿੰਟਸ, ਰਿਕ ਮਕੁਆਇਰ ਤੇ ਥਾਮਸ ਲੂਜ਼ੈਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਜੋਰ ਲਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ। ਸਾਰੇ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਤੇ ਆਉਣ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਿਕ ਮਕੁਆਇਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ 2 ਵਾਰੀ ਆ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਨੇ, ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਣ, ਪਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਫੋਨ ਲਾਈਨ ਤੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਥਾਮਸ ਲੂਜ਼ੈਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ ਕੈਸਲ ਡਾਊਨ ਤੋਂ MLA ਨੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਪੀਸੀ ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੋਇੰਗ ਟੂ ਬੀ ਦ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਆਈ ਗੈਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਹੋਣਗੇ। ਸੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਲਾਈਨ ਤੇ ਜੁੜ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਨੇ। ਵੈਲਕਮ ਥਾਮਸ।
Thank you so very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's very nice because it's always nice to have someone who's in the news. And when we set up the program yesterday, it was a different thing. But we can start from the very same topic. Can you tell us something about yourself, that why you're running and what made you decide to run for the campaign?
Well, number of reasons. But the main reason is that I know that I'm bringing something very different from the other two candidates. I'm bringing a very different perspective, life perspective, because I am also an immigrant. I wasn't born in Canada. I come from that kind of a background. I came here not speaking a word of English. My family struggled over here as new immigrants, and because of education and then hard work, and I managed to get myself elected into government. And I find that to be a very different perspective. I also have the experience. I have been elected for 13 years, and that definitely makes a difference. I'm a teacher by profession, and I find that what I'm speaking to really touches average families. Yes, business is very important, and selling oil is very important, and every premier will focus on that. But not every premier can understand and fully relate to what I call normal average families that have issues with daycares, issues with schools, issues with senior homes, issues getting a job, issues with immigration. I come from that kind of a family. I have 2 daughters. One is 5 years old, one is 14 years old. I tend to relate to Albertans that way, and I think this is the kind of a premier we need right now in this province.
So we can see from I think when you had your 3-point plan, I guess, but I think the important thing was when you talk about temporary foreign workers,
yes.
And you did relate this to that you want more landed immigrants instead of temporary foreign workers. Can you elaborate that?
Well, you bet. Under today's rules that the Prime Minister Harper put in place, my family could not come to Canada. And I find that unacceptable. People are not tools that you borrow, you work them really hard, and then you throw them out just to bring a new one. People want to come to Canada, and they want to settle in Canada. They want to buy a house, get a job, pay taxes, and become Canadians. That's the kind of a Canada I came to. That's Canadians welcomed my family here and treated us very well. I want to continue that tradition. The idea of bringing in workers for 2 or 4 years and then kick them out just to bring another one, economically it makes no sense, and morally it's just wrong. And we need a leader not only in this province but in this country that will stand up for immigration and say enough is enough. We're going down the wrong path. We need to bring families here. We need to bring permanent immigrants here so that they can continue building this country and become part of our community, part of our economy, not just like borrowed tools, be brought in and then kicked out just to be replaced.
So are we looking for some kind of a different arrangement with the federal government like the province of Quebec has?
You bet. Exactly. You're very right. Fixing numbers and moving numbers around with the temporary foreign worker program, that's not the answer. The answer is Quebec struck a really good deal with Ottawa a few decades ago. I want exactly the same deal for Alberta, where we get to decide whom we want and how many we want, and have that same independence on immigration. You know, if it works for Quebec, it will work for Alberta. And frankly, if it works for Alberta, it will be good for the rest of the country.
And when you started your campaign, the first thing you said that cleanup is the first thing that needs to happen. So here we are, we got 3 candidates. One candidate is getting support of almost 50 MLAs, and the 2 are ex-cabinet ministers. So according to you, what kind of cleanup you are looking for?
Well, you know, there's a number of cleanups that need to be done, but it is much easier to do cleanup when those, all the consultants and government relations consultants and everybody isn't around you. First of all, what I want to do is show Albertans everything, because Albertans will always wonder, is there anything else that they're hiding, that they're not showing us? I want the Auditor General to do a full audit of everybody's expenses and show it to the public. I have nothing to hide, and I certainly believe that nobody else has anything to hide. Let's show it to Albertans. Because it's hard to focus on tomorrow and focus on the important things when always in the back of your mind you're thinking, they're hiding something. There was more and they never showed it to us. I want a clean slate. I want to clean that out. Also inside of our PC party, some poor decisions have been made. I want to make sure that we deal with those decisions. But moving forward, I want Albertans also to have this assurance that the stuff that we have been hearing about the last premier, that this could never happen again. So I want to appoint an independent legislative budget officer that reports only to the legislature to from now on monitor the expenses of cabinet and of the new premier, so that Albertans can go to sleep at night knowing that there is an independent set of eyes watching over those expenses. That's unfortunate that we have to do it, because we never needed it, and hopefully we'll never need it again. But right now, I think Albertans expect that assurance.
Well, when the leadership race started, I think you were the one who were expecting there will be more debates so we can know more about the candidates. But somehow, I think from last few days, there were, 2 or 3 debates. So we got to know, actually all 3 of you a little bit. What we hear is that there was a little difference in the policies. When we talk about, let's say, healthcare, you were a little different than Mr. Jim Prentice. Can you elaborate your policies compared to his or Rick McCraver's?
Oh, we're significantly different on healthcare. You know, from what I'm hearing, and he should speak to him for himself, but from what I'm hearing, he wants to do a big restructuring at the top. He wants to appoint a new board with prominent Albertans that will be managing the healthcare system. And I'm saying that's a wrong approach. We've done this at least 5 times over the last few years. You know, we had hospital boards, we had 19 boards, we had 7 boards, then we had 1 board, then we fired the board. We've been hiring very high-priced executives, but you know what? At the end of the day, nothing has really changed. People are still waiting in emergencies for 8 hours. People can't find a family doctor, and when an ambulance brings a patient to hospital, paramedics have to sit there with him for 6 hours. So I conclude that the problem is not at the top. You know, I don't know if we have the best system at the top or the worst, but frankly, whatever happens up on top has no effect at the bottom. I want to focus on the front lines. You know, when my mother recently went to hospital and I spent some time talking to nurses and paramedics, that's where the answers are. I want to make sure that we address some of the frontline issues. And when you ask a nurse, why is it that people are waiting here for 6 hours, a nurse will actually give you a better answer than some of the executives, because she's there every day. She knows what the problem is, and she wants her patients to be happy. You know, so I want to address the frontline issues. You know, 70% of people who are waiting in the evening at the emergency don't actually have an emergency. The reason they're there is because there's nowhere else to go. You know, I was there with my daughter. She was 2-3 years old. Her ear would be hurting at night, had an infection. I don't need to go to an emergency. Any doctor could give you an antibiotic prescription, but at 9 p.m. there's nowhere to go. So you go to emergency. Those are the kinds of issues we need need to address. Hospitals can't do surgeries. You have a waiting list for your hip replacement, not because there is no surgeons or no operating rooms. It's because there's no recovery rooms for you to go. And the reason there is no recovery rooms is because seniors are occupying those rooms because there's no senior citizen homes for them.
Well, the promises were made, I think, in the last elections by your government that 150 primary care facilities they will be built, and they had a pilot project from the 3 hospitals. What happened to that, and will you support that?
No. You know what? I will perhaps share a piece of advice for everybody that we should use in every election. Always be careful with candidates that run around and promise you 50 schools, 75 schools, 150 clinics. The fact is that those numbers are pretty unrealistic. I cannot promise you how many schools will be built if I don't even know how much the industry can build right now, the building companies. And you're seeing this all over again right now. The fact is that the promise of 150 clinics was very unrealistic at that point in time.
And I come to another question about the schools. You mentioned it, number of schools were promised, and then number of schools, they were going to be renovated.
Yes.
And then here comes, nothing was built because they came up that the system, P3 system was bad. The way they were contracting was not good. But anyhow, the question is, even in Northeast, where we have such a big base of immigrant community, a lot of newcomers comes, we are in a desperate need of school. But the problem with our politicians are they always come during the votes and they promise that every community will get a school anyhow, and it never happened. But now even kids have to go bus through all over Calgary. There was a problem. Even there was some they put some grand opening stones that the school will be built. But now we have one leadership candidate who's promising 50 more new schools on the top of 50 were promised. You think if you become a leader, you will build 100 schools?
Well, you know what? I will not give you a number because there already is another candidate that he says I will build 75 on top of the 50 that haven't even been built yet.
Yeah.
Right? That's just simply ridiculous. I will tell you this, that if I am elected premier, number one, I am interested in amortizing the cost of schools. There is not a chance we can pay for everything cash up front. And because of the fact that our need for school is so high, we will be limited only by 2 factors. One, how many schools actually the industry can build, and 2, how many we can operate under a balanced budget. Because every time you build a school, you have to hire teachers and pay them salaries and operate them. And my operating budget has to be balanced. So those are the only 2 limiting factors. So we have to start building schools differently and not running around and promising people 50, 75, 100 schools. Number one, moving forward, in any new neighborhood that is being developed in a city, school should be one of the first buildings that is being built. That's how we used to do it 100 years ago. A school or a temple or a church were the first buildings built, and then a community grew around it. Our developers are very interested in doing that. Instead of promising families that one day on this field there will be a school. We lived there for 30 years and there still isn't one. Developers will actually build a school as they're developing a neighborhood and then pass the cost onto the province and onto the homeowners. And we can actually have schools built at the same time as a community is being developed. So we don't get any further behind with these backlogs. Second of all, it is silliness to put out a proposal to build 16 schools. Very few companies in Alberta and Canada can build 16 schools at the same time in 16 different cities. That takes a lot of labor. That takes a lot of capital investment. But if we were to set them up in proposals of 2-3 schools, a lot of small-size and medium-sized builders actually could do it. You would have more bids that would drive the price of the school down because it would be more competitive, and you would be able to build more of them at the same time.
Actually, Thomas, we'll just take a few minutes break.
Sure.
But stay on the line and we'll talk further, right?
Thank you so much.
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਸਬਰੰਗ ਰੇਡੀਓ 94.7 FM ਸਬਰੰਗ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਨਵੀਂ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ